I'm the music god CJ, plain as this is the Noize Report. You know what we do here? We laugh, we have fun, we interview cool and interesting people. And this week's victim, so to speak, or guest, you've seen this gentleman before over here. He was on the bracket we did for the greatest guitarist not named Eddie Van Halen. And we also did one with him and his son, who is kicking off his career, Gavin. So this time, this is Mr. Pete Evick.
No brackets today.
No brackets today.
I loved it though. I still talk about doing those, man.
Yeah, that was really fun. Like I love guitar music, but much like you, I definitely have my favorites.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like Gary Moore is my all-time favorite.
I remember you saying that when we were doing
Yeah.
it.
And it really was kind of like when it had like Gary versus I think Stevie Ray Vaughan, that one was just like
Yeah.
that one hurts a lot. Like that was ugly for me because those are like two of my, Stevie Ray was heavily influenced by Gary.
Right, right.
So it was one of them, but it was fun. That was all that matters. And
A lot of fun.
I've done a bunch of other ones, but they've just been sort of random, goofy ones. And I don't do them as much because it's hard to find people that are willing to do them. So
That's so strange to me. Why wouldn't anyone? I thought it was one of the most fun things I've ever done as far as these.
yeah, and
So,
I try to come up with fun brackets that are
yeah,
different and out of the ordinary, but people say they take too long.
right.
I get that it does take a lot longer than a typical thing because it's not something you can just
When,
speed through.
next time you have a good one, if no one wants to do it, just call me. Whatever it is, I'll do it.
I have a hairband one or a quote unquote hairband one.
Mhm.
Um, and it's actually 128 and I've got it broken up into 264s and it's deep. It's got like all the major players, it's got all the minor players.
I was gonna say, how was there really 128 actual hair bands? You had to go all the way down to
Dude, I've got everyone from Dogs D'Amour to Salty Dog to
right, right.
um I've
Little
got
Caesar.
I've got Shark Island, Spread Eagle,
Yeah, yeah.
um
Jet Boy.
Obsession, I've got Sweet FA,
Right.
um uh
Tangier.
Tangier, Chrome Molly, South Gang. Um
Right.
I went deep into the well for this, brother. Like I pulled all my I pulled the whole music collection out and just started
I actually played with
typing. So
I played with Butch when he was in South Gang. My band opened up for him when they were South Gang, when they were supporting that single Tainted Angel. It was great.
Butch is such a crazy
Look,
talent, man.
look
Like,
what he's done with Marvelous 3 now. Everyone sold out everywhere he's going, and everyone's dying to get tickets. It's great.
and even beyond that, written songs for uh Pink. He's
But
written
yeah, all
songs for
that.
Kelly
Yeah, yeah.
Clarkson, Avril. You know,
All that's amazing. I'm just saying it's funny that after
yeah.
some years he put Marvelous 3 back together and the world's going nuts about it.
And that was, that doesn't shock me because I don't think they fairly got their
I think
just due at that time. Like,
I don't think Butch put the effort into it back then. I think he was starting to become that hit songwriter for everyone else, and that was more appealing to him, maybe. You know what I mean?
yeah. And get your money while you can. I mean,
Yeah, right, right.
I mean, like you talk about, well, the reason we're here is uh, he has released a book. It's called MTV Famous, and I wrote my own little spiel for it. It is 266 pages of life debauchery and advice from a guy that's witnessed incredible highs and devastating lows and lived to write a book or two about it.
Sounds right.
So, um, so kind of like you're talking about in the book, man, it's, you know, fame is kind of fleeting and
Name
it
is
can
fleeting.
come
I,
and go very quickly. So,
I know that for a fact. I know some of the most famous people in the music business, and no matter how famous you get, you still chase more fame. If you can't get your head out of that game, it is
yeah.
without a doubt.
So I think relating to to Butch, I think, Butch was probably in the mindset of, hey, let me get this money while I can. And,
Yeah, right, right.
because,
Without a doubt.
yeah. So, I've never faulted Butch for any decision he's made because it's always worked out for him, it seems like,
Yeah, yeah.
minus the house fire and losing most of
Right.
his life in that, or his possessions per se.
I loved South Gang. I loved Marvelous Three. I loved the very first Butch Walker solo record. Uh,
Mhm.
I I appreciated what he did, but I didn't get too into when he went down that kind of retro Beatles feel where the record sounded like that.
Yeah.
I knew how great it was. It just wasn't my thing,
Right.
But I'm super excited about the new Marvelous Three stuff. Sounds great.
Yeah. And I get that. Like, a lot of people talk about Enough is Enough, and I liked them, I respected them, but the sort of retro Beatles thing that they did kind of,
Right.
I didn't enjoy them as much as, say, some of the other bands of that
Sure.
era. Um, I was always one for the bands that were sort of this is gonna sound bad, but I was sort of always a bigger fan of like the B level bands than the A level.
Sure.
Like bands like Shark Island and Salty Dog always
Right.
held way more appeal to me than, say, Dokken or
Oh, that
Bret.
guy, that guitar player in Shark Island, uh, incredible.
Spencer.
And to be honest with you, I wasn't really turned on to him till the last couple of years. I don't even know where I was or who I was talking to, and they showed him to me, and he's a contender with Steve Vai in that kind of swinging that crazy stuff around like that. Man, he's
Yeah.
what a great player.
I I was actually out in LA when it first sort of exploded, kind of kicked off, and they were still known as the Sharks at the time.
All right, on.
And when my dad sent me out there to live with my mom because I got into a bunch of trouble,
Mhm.
and dad was kind of just like, I don't even fucking want to look at you right now. Just get the fuck out of my house. And at
Yeah,
13, he couldn't kick me out. So the next best thing was, you're going to live with your mother.
right.
Where she lived 2 blocks off of Sunset. And, you know,
And I
13-year-old kid who was raised on a farm in Michigan was suddenly in the middle of LA with free time and no supervision.
right,
I didn't go to school. Fuck it. I wandered around Venice Beach and Sunset and took the bus anywhere I wanted. And
right.
who was going to tell me different? Mom worked in Redondo. She took the bus from 5 in the morning until I didn't see her again until 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah,
So
right.
I had my whole fucking day to do whatever I wanted.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I hung out on the strip, and got into
So,
as much trouble as I could.
hold on,
And
right.
I actually made friends with Richard. And he snuck me into a few shows that I shouldn't have been at. It was kind of one of
Yeah,
them things like, stay back here, make yourself really small, and don't let anybody
right,
know you're there.
right.
So, it was, I had some really fun times out there and got to see a few things that I probably had no business seeing
Of
at
course.
13 years old. So the book is called MTV Famous, and you tell a lot of great experiences and stories and different things. And I kind of want to start at the beginning. You make reference to Jack and Diane and
Right.
John Mellencamp. And that hit home to me right away because I don't think, you always hear people talk about what band had the greatest 3 record run. And nobody ever mentions John Mellencamp in that, but American Fool, and Scarecrow might
Hit
be,
after hit, right?
yeah, like might be, you
Yeah,
know, one of the greatest 3 record runs that any artist has had. Because
that's
you,
right. And I always skip Scarecrow and the one that came after that,
right,
and my brain always goes to the Human Wheels record, which was only sparked 2 singles, I think, and they
hmm
weren't giant hits, but the record was just so great. Do you know that record at all?
hmm
has a song called "When Jesus Left Birmingham" on it. That's incredible. And then the song "Human Wheels" was I loved, and the single was a song called "What If I Came Knocking." That was great. But yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I don't think of them that way either. I don't really I've never thought about those three records, how significant they were all in a row, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah. I relate to Scarecrow because I grew up on a 400-acre farm.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Yeah. He
that,
means that stuff too, man.
yeah. Well, I mean, he grew up in Fairmont, Indiana, which is the home of James Dean, and
Right.
it's American farmland. So, um, and when he did Farm Aid and all of that during that time period, it was, you know, he was
Yeah.
talking about the people that he lived with
That's
every
right.
day. You know,
He
those
kept
were his parents and his grandparents and his family. So,
Yeah, I still do when I do my acoustic set, I do Small Town every night in that
nice.
set. It's a great song. So
Yeah. Pink houses. I mean, there's just so many. Like it's just,
yeah.
even I think it was his grandmother that he recorded where the lady singing on the porch. It
Oh
was a
really?
dark, stormy night. And he's got it on that record, and it was just everything about it was so. It's how I grew up, so I really
Right.
related to that. Like it was more than the Elton John, more than the Police, Prince, and all the other artists of that era.
Yeah. And it's
Mellencamp was,
and like
he was us,
right,
man. Like,
and like I said in the book, for me living here in DC, and at that time in the 80s, Washington DC was still the second biggest city in the world next to New York.
mm,
And I would watch those videos and listen to him talk about that stuff like it was a fantasy. I didn't believe that there was a part of the country that looked and felt like that. And I wanted to see it with my own eyes.
yeah,
I wanted to see that big grassy field and the
yeah,
houses spread out like that.
yeah. My grandfather is a 96, and he still runs that farm every single
Oh,
day.
that's great. It's
And
great that it's still there to do it.
yeah, it's just just as tough as leather.
Yeah.
Doesn't do the beans and the corn anymore because he's too old for it. But him and my Uncle Marty, they have hay there now, and
Right.
they make the hay for all the farmers, and they sell the hay. And but it just, I just think like I've this man has been there my whole life, and
Right.
obviously he's not going to be there significantly longer. He's 96. Uh,
Right.
but the fact that he's 96 and he still gets up every single morning and goes out there and gets on that tractor and goes out into the field and still does his garden. And
And how long into the winter do they do that?
um it depends on if it's winter wheat or summer wheat. Winter wheat you generally put in around about the end of October or so, and then it kind of grows through the winter,
Oh, I didn't even know
sort
there
of
was.
sprouts up and early in the spring.
Yeah.
So you can get 2 cycles out of it, but yeah, you kind of have to know what you're doing to do it, I guess. And
Gotcha. It's
um
intriguing to me, man. But yeah.
it's hard. And I think about it now. I like when I was a kid, everybody, what do you want to be in life? I'm going to be a rock star. Oh, well, that's cute. That's cute. But what if that doesn't work out? There was never a plan B for me.
That's right.
I was going to be a fucking rock star. So I didn't
Yeah.
want to hear about, let me show you how to do a garden. Let me show you how to drive truck. Let me show you how to fix a tractor. I didn't want to hear that shit because I was not going to be stuck on that farm like my dad, my grandfather, and his grandfather.
Right.
And 52 now, and we've had the discussion with grandpa, like, hey, who you leaving the farm to? Because, like right
Yeah.
here, like, I want that farm. And 14-year-old me, I wanted nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
But
Well, it's funny. It's not exactly the same, but I talk often about uh the I talk often about the airport used to be my favorite thing to go to because it meant I was leaving, and now coming home is my favorite thing.
yeah,
It changes in time. I actually I have a new Evick song coming out. Well, I don't know if I'll ever. It takes me so long to finish the Evick songs, but the opening lyric is, I grew up in one of those towns Mellencamp sings about. I spent most of my life, or I love it now, but spent most of my life trying to get out. And,
Yeah.
it relates to exactly what you're saying.
No, it was exactly because I couldn't get out fast enough.
Yeah,
And then I hit a point where I'd been all over the world for
right.
whatever reason. And, I've lived in Atlanta, I've lived in Little Rock, I've lived in Detroit and Flint. And
You lived in
I,
Flint,
yeah,
and you're allowed to tell about it, so that's great.
I was at the age of 16 years old, one of my last foster homes I was in. They put me on the north side of Flint, which is the worst part of Flint, and sent me to Flint Northwestern High School. I was the only white kid in the entire school.
Wow.
And the first day that I walked in, I opened the door and I walked in, and the school stopped.
Right.
Everyone in the school looked at me like, motherfucker lost or what?
Yeah,
Like,
right, right,
and it's one of the few times in my life I was truly terrified. Like, I had no idea what to expect. Uh,
right.
Luckily, the novelty of being the only white kid was too much for some of them to resist. So they kind of,
Yeah. You know,
made me part of the group. I was the token white guy.
yeah.
Um,
It's funny in my elementary school, you're talking about high school, I think, but in my elementary school, there was one black boy and one black girl. And it never even occurred to me. Uh, I understand the world's a really different place right now, and us
mhm,
50-year-old white men are the enemy no matter what. And the fact that I say it didn't occur to me is me saying I didn't care. It's not that I didn't
right.
care. It just didn't occur to me. But I often do think back now what that must have felt like. Like, I don't think anybody was mean or rude to them. I don't think any of that. But just like you saying, you walked in there and you were uncomfortable because you were the minority, and that has to be rough on a kid. And I often think back about it to this day. The girl, her name was Tiffany Tanks. I still keep in touch with her today, and she's doing great. But I often wonder what that felt like, and it's the same thing you felt in Flint.
Even when I was in Mayville, when, up at grandpa's house and with dad, we had one black family in town, and they were wealthy. Mom was a nurse and dad worked for General Motors. Um, so I won't say they're wealthy. They were upper middle class. They
Yeah.
were Cosby like, and they had twin boys, Ricky and Randy, and they were very much the Urkel type. Um, they were nerdy and smart, and we didn't think twice about it because they didn't get in any trouble and they didn't
They were just
act any different.
it was just part of
So
your community, right?
yeah,
But
so
but we're punished now for thinking that. You understand that, right? Just this
and
conversation is racist, what we're having right
well, but I mean, they're both prosecuting attorneys now.
now. Oh, right
Uh,
on. The
one is
children,
in
the
Yeah,
two
one's in
children.
Saginaw and one's in Bay City.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, we knew that they were going to grow up and be successful because their parents were successful and
Right.
they came from a good home and blah blah blah. But there was a lot of racism in the school that I attended. I mean, it wasn't really
Yeah.
a secret, and
Right.
I always hated it. So even when I was in Flint, it didn't bother me any about the race thing. The thing that offset me about it is there's a McDonald's across the street from Flint Northwestern High School. That McDonald's has bulletproof glass at the counters.
Right.
So, like when you go into a bank and you have to put your money through the thing,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that's what McDonald's was like.
Right. Right.
Now, you're in a fucked up neighborhood
Right.
when McDonald's has bulletproof glass.
They got to slide your cheeseburger through a bulletproof.
They had one of them little circular things like party stores have.
Yeah.
And that's what set me off, was kind of like, fuck is going on in this neighborhood that McDonald's has
Right.
bulletproof glass? I understand party stores, okay, but McDonald's had it.
Yeah.
Like, I grew up where only banks had that shit, like, so that was really new to me, and it kind of made an impression to me. Like I had to really watch my ass because
Yeah,
I was not in Kansas anymore, so to speak.
right. I got you.
So, like I said, I was lucky because they kind of I was the token white kid, and I was cool. You know, I was already into hip hop, and I was already into a lot of the things they like. So
Right,
I related, and I think they realized that maybe we weren't as different as they thought, and they weren't as different as I thought because hey, we all loved football, and we all loved baseball,
right,
and we all loved music, and even on the rock side, hey, I knew who Jimi Hendrix was. I knew who, you know, the Jeffersons and Sanford and Son was. So we kind of related on that. So
right.
it was cool. Um, you talk about Kiss.
What do you
That
like?
was another thing, man. Like I think every well, at least every middle class white kid,
That's
um,
where it started for all of us, right?
like had a brother or sister who helped us put on the Kiss
Sure.
paint, and we jumped on the bed with
I did. I had a brother that put the Ace Frehley
yeah,
makeup. It's
you know,
exactly, yeah.
um,
My mom
our
put the Ace Frehley costume.
yeah, and we had the typical arguments over who was going to be Gene and who was going to be Paul and who was going to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
Ace, and
There was no
uh,
arguing in my neighborhood. Yeah, I was Ace, and that was it. Or else
yeah. See,
you
and
had to leave.
I I was a huge fan of the song Beth, so I always wanted to be Peter
Right on.
because I wanted to be the one who sang Beth. So
It's funny that you say that. Is um, I am openly admit that I just don't care that Tommy and Eric are in Kiss. It doesn't bother me like it bothers a lot of people.
yeah,
But I don't like Eric singing Beth. I don't know why. I feel like I feel like they ought to just let that one go. I don't know why.
I
It
don't think
doesn't.
I've ever heard him sing it, to be honest.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah, I've seen it a
um,
bunch of times, and
and I'm a huge
he does it great.
yeah, I'm a huge fan of Tommy from the
Yeah,
Black and Blue days. So I never had an issue with Tommy because
yeah,
it was never really a secret. Even when he was in Black and Blue, he always talked about that he was a massive Ace Frehley fan and he was a
right,
massive Kiss fan. So
right. And he does it great. He does it
yeah,
great. If you're just going to watch Kiss, what your brain remembers as Kiss in the 70s or 80s, he delivers it perfectly.
yeah. And I think the thing, at least to me, with Kiss isn't Kiss is about the music, but I think more than the music, Kiss is an experience.
It's an
It's
experience.
almost
Yes,
kind
yeah.
of in the sense, maybe not on the same scale as say Star Wars or Star Trek, but
It's a lot like that.
yeah,
It's like when you go to see Blue Man Group, it's never the same guys. Maybe it was at the beginning, but now there's
right,
different versions of it with different people. You don't know it. You're just seeing that, you know,
right.
any Broadway show or anything like that. Kiss is more like that, where, you get it.
Yeah, like it's Kiss to me, it's more of an experience than it is, like yes, you want to hear rock and roll all night. Yes, you want to hear Detroit Rock City, but more than that, again, you're there for the makeup, you're there for the explosions, you're there for
Right.
everything that goes with it, and if you're our age, it takes you back to that time of, you
That's right.
know, I could do that because I did it when I was 10.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
um,
I agree with you 100%.
and the music is cool. Like even during that 80s period when they were quote unquote unmasked, it's
It was
still a
great
lot of
music.
fun. And
Crazy Nights was an incredible song. Tears Are
yeah,
Falling. Who Wants to Be Lonely? The Asylum record was great.
yeah.
Revenge was a masterpiece.
I'm a huge fan of the Hot in the Shade record. There's
Yeah, that might be my least favorite, but it had some great music on it.
yeah,
I liked Asylum a lot,
yeah,
and I liked Animal. I liked it all. I loved every bit of it, man.
yeah.
I
Asylum
was
was a really great record.
yeah, but I was never a I didn't choose. I was a makeup guy and a not makeup guy. It was all still just Kiss to me.
So relating to Kiss, he told the story um of to school calling
Oh
your mother about
yeah,
Kiss being a satanic band and all of that. And
Yeah.
I really related to that because as a badass little kid, my dad got the brilliant idea in fourth grade that since you got into so much trouble in public school, we're going to send you to a private Baptist school.
Oh boy.
And one of the first things that happened, I was there probably about a week, and we were having a spelling test, and I was bored. So I started scribbling in the margins, and I did the Kiss logo, and I did the Twisted Sister logo,
Yeah, right.
and I did the Motorhead logo, and I got called to the office the next day, and they called my dad, and in the
Right.
same spiel about how these bands are satanic and why would you write that on your paper? And dad, he was pissed because he thought I was just doing it to be hateful.
Yeah.
He thought I was doing it to cause trouble.
Yeah. You were the kid in the I Want to Rock video.
And I wasn't, dude, I was bored.
Yeah, sure.
So I was just scribbling and I didn't think about it being on the paper that I was turning in. And the teacher just, oh, it was the church's, um, the head deacon's wife was my
Right.
teacher, and she just lost her mind over it, man. And I ended up getting kicked out of school for like 4 days over it, and it was such a bullshit thing. Like even then, I was so angry about it because I just kept thinking this is a bunch of bullshit.
Sure, sure.
Like if you don't know anything, and I just couldn't help but thinking how stupid they were.
Right.
It's like what has Twisted Sister ever recorded other than Burn in Hell that was even remotely satanic,
What my favorite thing is uh about that era and the PMRC and all that stuff is
Right.
my favorite thing is there was an old interview with Blackie Lawless and the PMRC. I think it was in the court. I think was he in there with the trials when
I think he was. I think him and D and Zappa.
exactly. Yeah. And
Um,
it is because he's on a stand and
mhm.
uh he says to the audience, anyone that's taking a 35-year-old man with a saw blade between his legs serious, they're the ones that have the problem.
Right.
Yeah, and it stuck with me for the rest of my life, because as a kid, it was big to me and it was serious. Like I thought maybe that was how he walked around, but when he said that, all of a sudden I saw all of them different. I saw D different. I saw all of them as not in a bad way, but all of a sudden it just made sense to me. Rock and roll started to me not as fun. I was young and it was about a way of life. And I took it to heart and I took it serious. And it took me a long time to understand the fun of it. But Blackie saying that helped me understand that a little bit better. And I was able to go back and all of a sudden watch some of the Kiss videos and seeing Paul smile actually and realizing there was fun to it. You know what I mean? I just thought it was my calling in life to be in the Kiss Army and I was ready to fight if I had to.
It it's funny to me too that the way that worked out, they actually helped a number of artists
Oh yeah.
probably sell way more records than they would have ever sold
Oh yeah. When
to
when I
begin with.
when my first band, some odd reason, put our first record out, I wanted that explicit lyric sticker
Right.
on. You wanted it. It was like a badge you wanted to
Yeah.
wear. Yeah.
Well, I mean, think about Two Live Crew. Like Two Live Crew, let's not mince words. That was it was fucking horrible. And the fact that they sold as many records as they did was based on the fact that the PMC went after them and everybody wanted to hear what it was.
That's
When the
right.
reality was that record had been out for a year and a half beforehand and it sold almost no records whatsoever.
Right.
It was only after they went after Luke
Yeah. Yeah.
that everybody wanted to have that record. And it was the same with Cop Killer.
Yes.
Cop Killer was on Ice T's rap record and nobody said shit. And then
Right.
Tipper went after it and
Yeah.
we're going to form Body Count. It was only after he had formed Body Count and made it a metal song
Yeah.
that Tipper got on her high horse and this shit blew up. And it was like,
Yeah, thank
you
them all.
don't realize that you're helping the artist more than you're hurting them. Like
Right.
you
It's
said, it
very
was a
true.
badge of honor to have that on there.
Yep, very true.
I went into record stores looking for records
Looking for it. Right,
that
right.
had that on there because those were the ones I wanted to buy.
I agree.
Um, Motley Crue, when Shout at the Devil come out, I wanted that record so badly. And my dad, he saw the picture of Crue and he was just like,
Yeah. See,
no chance.
my parents, there was nothing. It was anything went. There was the only record that was ever of any question to my mother was I had bought the Last Command from Wasp, and while I bought it, and we bought it, and then I went next door to the next place and got a haircut. So my mom's curiosity piqued, and she read the lyrics while I was getting the haircut. And then she learned from that to never read them again.
Yeah.
Like she didn't. She tried to tell me we were going to take that record back, but I won that battle, and she knows better than that. I mean,
Yeah.
Elvis was just as bad when she was a kid. You know what I mean? And that was my argument. And then I got my Wasp record back, and that was the end of that.
I wanted Crue, and my dad he would not budge. And it went on, and it went on, and it went on. And Christmas rolled around. My family at the time for Christmas, we drew names. And whoever's name you got, that's who you bought your gift for. I have a set of aunts who are twins, my Aunt Connie and my Aunt Carrie. My youngest uncle got my Aunt Carrie, who's the cool one. My Aunt Connie, who I got, she's the Martha Stewart of the family. And Christmas come around and gifts were handed out. And Cliff opened his, and he had that fucking Shout at the Devil record. And I just looked over at him like, oh, you fucking bitch. And I opened my gift. She bought me this fucking sweater from Macy's that looked like something fucking Carlton would have wore.
Right. Look at you still feel the pain.
Dude, fuck is I'm looking at like, do you know me at all?
Right. No.
Like
No.
this is getting hidden in the back of the closet.
Right.
This will never see the Cliff looks over at it and he picks it up and he goes, oh dude, that's the coolest sweater ever. Want to trade? Cliff's like, hell yeah. He shoves the Motley Crue record in my hand and I'm down the hallway with it just immediately. And dad posted, he's like, fuck it, whatever. Just go listen to the fucking record. And he finally just was like, fuck it, whatever. And that's how I got my Motley Crue record. But it was the perfect trade-off.
Yeah.
And I was just the look on my face, I think, said it all because it to this day, like I think about that sweater and I just think, Jesus Christ, that was the ugliest goddamn thing I've ever seen. And it was one of them knit pullover sweaters that the yuppies wore.
Yeah, I get it.
And I was like, do you know me at all? Like, what part of the ripped jeans and the fucking Grim Reaper t-shirt did you fucking miss? Like but that's how I got my Motley Crue record. So it pretty much went on downhill from there. Next thing I want is you talk about someone on this record that I'm a huge fan of. And it really kind of shocked me to see the reference because definitely not someone I would have ever associated with you. When you set your studio up, talk about Soulja.
Oh yeah, you know who they are.
I love Soulja, dude. I am a huge reggae fan.
That's amazing. I was clear in my book. I didn't give a shit. I had my my intern engineer record that and I just left and look what they turned into, man. It was incredible. Yeah.
I'm a huge reggae fan. I have an uncle Um,
They were cool, and I did watch it a few times. I did stay in the studio in the control room and watch, and during a few of the sessions, and it was cool. It was
yeah,
cool. I had just had a lot of other things happening in my life, and
I get
was
it.
starting to lose my faith in music anyway. And they didn't. They had just gotten together. They didn't know what
Mhm.
they were doing, but they were good at it already.
Right.
But they didn't know how to be in a studio yet. And I was at this point in my life where I couldn't even muster the energy to try to teach someone, you know, to where to plug their headphones in and dial in a mix for them to listen to and just because a lot of the stuff that when me and Chuck owned that studio, a lot of the bands came in. It was the first time they'd ever been in a studio, and if you know anything about making a record, there's a learning curve to that you have to teach. It has to be taught to you, and I and there was so many members of that band at that time,
Right.
you know, and I remember just going, I can't fucking do this. And now I look back and I would have given anything to have been a part of it. But whatever happened, maybe whatever I would have done would have ruined it. Maybe I would have set them on a different path. Everything happens for a reason. But yeah, that makes my day that you know who they are. That's
Yeah.
incredible.
I I got into reggae kind of in a weird way. One of my uncles works for National Geographic, and he has owned a couple of scuba resorts, and one
Uh-huh.
was in the Grand Caymans. And I would go to the Grand Caymans to kind of just work for him randomly, um, just as a gopher, basically. Go for this, go for that. So they had a house band, and the house band was a steel drum reggae band.
Right,
And that was the first time that I'd have heard reggae other than Bob Marley.
right.
And it sort of became this, I don't want to say obsession, but it was so different from the rock and the punk and the southern rock that I grew up on.
Sing reggae live is it's very organic, it's very jam
Yeah,
band like. And it's a really neat experience to watch them all just lock into those pockets on those grooves and
yeah,
just they can go for hour on one groove and
yeah,
you don't even realize the time passed by. It's great stuff without a doubt.
yeah. And that's why I say I could totally understand them not really quote unquote understanding the studio
Yeah,
side
yeah,
of it at that point, because reggae very much is a live
yeah,
music.
right,
Like it's,
right. And
you
they
know,
recorded that stuff live with me. What they
yeah.
did in my studio and that was the other thing that was also I was like, I just want to get out of here because literally, in a studio, miking everything up live and making that happen isn't easy,
No.
And yeah, it's funny. Like I said, I only probably said hello to them 2 or 3 times, and and watched a couple times, and looking back though, they were I brushed paths with their game changers in their genre without a doubt.
Yeah. They're, like I said, they're one of the groups that I really like because they have that kind of cool mix of reggae and rock, sort
Yeah,
of
yeah.
rootsy rock, sort of. And um, you I get that reggae isn't for everybody, and that's fine. I like reggae though, and
Everybody
that's why
pretends everybody pretends it's for them when they're down in the Florida Keys or
reggae
you know what I mean, or there's some place like that, and it's
is my happy music. Like I listen to reggae and I get happy because it's just the beat and flow of reggae. It
yeah.
just,
I don't know that it's a happy thing for me. It's more of uh, a mellow thing for me. I'm so
yeah,
high strung.
that's what I'm saying. Like I don't know how you can be mad or angry when you
You
listen to
can't,
reggae.
you can't. But it
You know,
certainly relax you. I'm never going to get up and party. I'm just going to sit there and chill to it. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Um, it's like Jimmy Buffett. Like I'm not the hugest Jimmy Buffett fan, but I give Buffett credit that Buffett,
He
you
created a way
know,
of life, buddy. Whether
yeah, like
you, whether you like the music or not, he
yeah,
became he became a lifestyle. That's
yeah,
a lot of people get there for a brief time or but he went to his grave with an army of people that live their life specifically as he suggested.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely turned it into an industry, so to
Yeah,
speak. Like, um, um, the next thing I had written down, I wrote down singing bad singers, good songs,
right.
and I'm not sure where I was in the book when I wrote that
It was
down.
probably talking about the change from my first band, Some Odd Reason, to turning it into Evick, and my record label and my lawyer told me to sing, even though I had never sang before because I'd written the songs, and they thought that I would deliver the vocal with more passion, even though I wasn't a great singer. That has to be the section you're talking about.
It might be it, you know, it. I I think one of the main things I was probably thinking at the time is I've seen so many good bands that were ruined by bad singers,
Right.
good songs that were ruined by bad
Yeah.
singers. Um, and I've seen some mediocre songs that were elevated
Sure, I get
by
that.
really good singers.
Right.
There's a few
But
songs that Jeff Scott Soto has sung that I love Jeff, and there's a few songs that I've heard Jeff sing that I think if anybody else other than Jeff sang them, I probably wouldn't give two shits about the song.
sure, sure,
Um,
sure. But there's also a handful of guys that aren't great singers that were able to put passion into something. I mean, let's be real serious, man. Vince was never a great singer, um, but whatever they did, he was cool. He
yeah.
was so cool that you can't you know I love John Corabi. I think he's one of the best, and I love that Motley Crue record personally.
Oh, love that
But
record.
but the sound was gone that we called Motley Crue. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, they've never gotten that back, even though they got Vince in the band. But but the different, the one thing that I believe, and I take this back to Van Halen, Kiss, the Beatles, even part of the one thing that I think created those bands that we live with our whole life and hold on to still is we grew with them. That first Motley Crue record, the first Poison record, the first Van Halen record, the first Rat record, all that stuff has these great songs, but none of them are great on it. Even Van Halen, they're not great on that record. Edward's great, but you know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of their next records were a little bit better, and including the Beatles, Kiss, everybody. And
Mm-hmm.
there used to be a thing where you grew with the band, and that created this bond and the Goo Goo Dolls were like that. The Goo Goo Dolls, you
Mm-hmm.
got to grow with them, but
Yeah.
even into the late '80s when you got God forbid, man, those guys in Firehouse, Bill Leverty is a brother. He's one of my favorite guitar players. The songs were great, but that first record's already perfect, so there was nowhere to go with it.
Mm-hmm.
Like other than the next record was going to sound just like that. They were already all incredible, and the record was produced great. And that's how it happens today. I enjoyed, in hindsight, because I didn't know I was doing it as a kid, but I enjoyed growing with the band. I
Mm-hmm.
remember getting Open Up and Say the day it came out and putting it on and hearing a significant growth in the band,
Yeah.
you know, and then with Flesh and Blood
From the
is
songwriting
yeah,
aspect of it.
and the talent. Cece's tone got better. Bret got to be a better singer, and so there's something to be said to the youthfulness of not being great because that is the energy of rock and roll. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But I'm 100% with you. There are particular songs that the singer gives you the chills, and if that singer wouldn't have given you the chills, the song would have just been mediocre.
Yeah. To me, the epitome of this statement has always been Tom Waits. Tom Waits is, I don't think anyone is ever going to accuse Tom Waits of being a great singer,
Right.
but the man spins a tale, man. Like his
Sure.
songs are fucking incredible. And the same with Dylan. I don't think anybody would accuse Dylan of being a great singer.
No, not
Uh,
at all. Not at all.
but, you know, can you honestly sit here and say anything about Dylan other than he doesn't have a great voice.
He's a legend. I got you.
Right.
David Lee Roth. No one's ever going to claim he's great, but he changed the fucking world too, man.
Yeah.
The attitude was everything.
Yeah. And just the coolness factor. Tom Petty. Questionable maybe on some of his vocals, but the man had swagger.
Oh, he did.
There's something about Tom Petty that
you know, uh, his guitar player Mike Campbell.
Mm-hmm.
Mike
his new band is awesome.
Yeah, he's great. Mike wrote "Boys of Summer." You ever read that story?
Mm-hmm.
"Boys of Summer" is one of my favorite songs of all time. Like, it's just perfectly written song. And he took it to Tom, and Tom didn't want it. Did you know that? That's how it ended up on Don Henley's plate, man. Well, I wonder if Tom ever thought, oh, maybe I should have done that, Yeah.
There's a few that, over the years that there's a few songs that have been written for one person and they chose not to record it. And
yeah, right.
Making Love Out of Nothing at All was actually written for Bonnie Tyler.
Oh, right
and
on.
She chose Total Eclipse of the Heart over Making Love Out of Nothing at All, which worked out for her.
Yeah, that worked out for her pretty good.
But I think Making Love Out of Nothing at All would have worked out pretty well for her as well.
Without a doubt.
But then Air Supply recorded it, and then Bonnie turned around later and did record a version of Making Love Out of Nothing at All.
Yeah. It's funny how that works too. My favorite singer of all time is Sammy Hagar. And he wrote, recorded, and released the "I've Done Everything for You." And what's that? What'd you say?
I was like, I've done everything for you.
Yeah. And Sammy's voice is great, but it didn't work for him. And it was smash. It basically broke Rick Springfield into another level. It's funny how that stuff works. When I released my first record, it was called "To Whom It May Concern," and the guy that produced the record was Richard Goddard, who founded Sire Records with Seymour Steins, and was first and foremost, they brought Blondie and the Go-Go's to they produced those records, and they what is my point? Why was I telling you this? What were we talking about before that?
The Boys of Summer and the cover songs.
But the song that I had written, "To Whom It May Concern," which I actually just released again 20 years ago. I don't know if you've seen all that. But it fits the time we're in right now. It's appropriate time for that song. But they had other bands cut it, and it was really weird to hear they would send me back the tapes of other artists that were using it to cut. They couldn't write their own songs because I wanted to get into that whole being a songwriter thing, you know what I mean? And that's really weird to hear another band's interpretation of your track.
Yeah. It's funny how some songs the covers of some songs have taken on lives of their own and been bigger than I love Rock and Roll by Joan Jett.
I've never heard the original version.
It's fairly similar, but I don't think the Arrows ever had any idea that they would make more money off of someone else performing their song than they ever did. And
Poison took Mama Don't Dance to a whole different level.
Ian Hunter, and I don't think Ian Hunter would have ever imagined that Great White would have stolen his thunder. As great as Ian Hunter was.
Well, let's talk about the biggest of this topic there is to this day is Quiet Riot and Slade.
I have said from day one, and I've gotten into so much trouble, including a very rude, snarky comment from Kevin's wife or ex-wife, or however you want to say. I have often referred to Quiet Riot as the world's greatest Slade tribute. She did not like that. And I was like, well, I meant it as a compliment because, look, if you listen to Quiet Riot and you don't immediately hear Slade.
Well, his voice was made.
Right, exactly. Well, that was the whole thing. And and they did multiple Slade things. And I never meant it as an insult. It was just when you see all of these tribute bands now, or all of these cover bands, or all of these bands, Quiet Riot kind of, yes, they wrote their own music and had their own stuff, but voice wise, costume wise, look wise, I mean, they really were an extension of what
Right.
Slade
Right.
started, So
And there's nothing wrong with that. It was what they loved. It was their influence.
exactly. And they were great at it.
Right.
I mean, that's not in the pantheon of singers to imitate. That's not exactly one of the easier ones
Yeah.
to
When
take on.
in
Um,
my cover band when I play, uh, we do Bang Your Head, Mental Health, and I always introduce it as the late great and impossible to imitate Kevin DeBro.
you know, Kevin was a force of nature, man.
Force of
And
nature. My son does Come On Feel the Noise, and I
nice.
get jealous because we both have it's in our DNA, similar to what you're talking about. He sounded like the guy from Slade. Both me and I'm watching it because it never occurred to me until I watched my son. And then even this weekend we were playing at Soundcheck with the Bret Michaels band. I always do Mental Health too, and Mark McGrath was there at Soundcheck, and
Nice.
Mark was like, "Jesus Christ, you sound just like Kevin," and that's the greatest compliment anyone could ever fucking give me. And but my son has it too, which says it's something genetically. Your tone. I mean, I don't have Kevin's range,
Mhm.
but I've never been able to sing "Come On Feel the Noise." I've done "Mama We're All Crazy Now," and I've done Mental Health, and I get jealous of my son because he can do "Come On Feel the Noise" and he nails it.
Nice. I, there's, I've always said there are those musicians, those singers that some you can tell were trained and had a lot of, um, I don't want to say help, but they had a lot of training to do what they did.
Sure,
And then there are those guys that are just, they were born with it.
that's right.
Like they were born and raised for that stage to be rock stars.
Right.
And nothing that life was going to throw at them was ever going to change that.
Things that's there's a
Um,
right.
Kevin DeBro, Tommy Bolin, Phil Lynott, or just a few, Freddie Mercury,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
just a few names that come to mind that they were bigger than life
For
when it
sure.
come to personality.
Elton John.
Elton John, Gene Simmons.
Right, right.
I know Gene was a elementary school teacher beforehand, but I really have a hard time picturing Gene doing anything other than
Sure.
what he did. Like I can't picture Gene being a lawyer. I can't picture
You're
Gene
right.
selling cars or working at Walmart or anything like that. Like you
Of course.
just,
Of course.
you know, um, so to the next thing on my list, you talked about Downtown Hoedown, and I had to laugh because you kind of, you told the story of you had no idea what you were walking into for
I had
that.
no fucking idea, man. Till that day, I'll never, I forget exactly how I explained that in the book, but Brett called me and he just said it's a little radio gig. He termed little radio gig. And my every little radio gig I'd done at that point was under a tent at in a strip mall with a radio truck and a little stage. You know what I mean? You ever seen the first Avengers movie where where they go what's her name the 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 guy that shoots the arrows
Oh,
and
Hawkeye.
Scarlett, what's Scarlett Johansson's character's name?
Um, Black Widow.
Black Widow, when they're in that first battle and one of them says something and the other goes, "You remember Kosovo much different than I do." Do you remember that? Yeah. And that's what me and Brett's version of a little radio gig's different. But I imagine you know something about the Downtown Hoedown.
Oh, I'm quite familiar with it being the Michigan kid. I've been to just about every one, and that's why I kind of laughed when you said that because I was like, "Holy shit, the hoedown is Huge. I mean,
were you at that one by any chance?
no,
All
I
right.
don't think I was.
Yeah.
I might have been. I don't know, to be honest. Like I've been to
Jody,
so many, I
Jody,
kind of lose track of which ones are.
yeah,
I know
Jody
I've
Messia
seen.
was the headliner that year. And Jody Messia was the headliner. And oh, I
I think
forget
I
there
might
was
might have been at that one then.
yeah.
I remember seeing Jody Messina.
Yeah, so it was interesting. But anyway,
I
but
don't
what
know.
about it though that you brought up?
I just I thought it was funny the way, like,
Yeah,
you talked about, you had no idea what you guys were walking into, and then when you got out there, and
right.
just relating to the fact that the hoedown is really, it's in the middle of Hart Plaza, and
So
it's
I was gonna ask, do they hold that in that same place every year?
mhm,
Yeah, that's an amphitheater, man. Whatever
mhm,
that was, that was a
Hart Plaza.
yeah.
It's Hart Plaza is what it is, and it's getting bigger and bigger every year. Like they're bringing
That's what I
bigger and
heard.
bigger names, and
Yeah.
they had it was Willie Nelson and Chris Stapleton, I think, this year.
Oh, right on.
There was, I think, 47,000 people or something there for it.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a huge thing, and they started out, it was free when it first started out. It was supposed to be this big free festival thing,
Right.
but then it kind of become, okay, now we're going to bring in the art people, we're going to bring in the food trucks, we're going to bring in
Right.
all of this other stuff. So it sort of turned into this festival per se, as just a concert, which was what it was supposed to be. Um, but it's still very cool, and it's still very popular, and um, it's definitely, you know, not everybody gets to play that. It's
Yeah.
you've got to be somebody to
Yeah.
be
Well,
on that stage.
that was the year that Bret released "All I Ever Needed," and it actually charted in the top 10 country there charts for a while. So
Right.
there was a reason for us to be there, without a doubt.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like they don't just put,
Yeah.
every up and comer on that stage. Like you have to be established in
Right.
following, and you have to be doing something current that is impressive to be on that
Yeah.
stage. So um I think the last thing I wrote down, at towards the end of the book, you one of the things you wrote the section on being kind, and you related it with
Bruno
um
Ravel.
Bruno,
Yeah.
and I love that because, to me, I think the most important thing that a person can be is kind. It's
And it's hard in the music business, man.
Yeah, like there's so much division in the world. There's so much divisiveness. There's so much
Yeah.
media noise and everything, that kindness really, I think, is what sets a person apart. You
Sure.
know, uh, I'm not saying every person can be kind 100% of the time, but it's those little moments where you can pick your shots and do something that will change someone's life, or just change their day.
Sure.
That
Yeah.
it's so important to me that
Bruno that day set me on I can't I'll never be able to say exactly what happened, but without a doubt it changed me that day, made my day better, but gave me a different outlook and my perspective. So, I don't even speak to Bruno much anymore. I know Ted very, very well, and I talk to Steve all the time, but you know, uh that day was the defining moment, and it was part of my history, man. It's part of what made me who I was. He was super cool to me that day, and it meant the world to me. I'll never let it go.
yeah. And the thing I wanted to end with is kind of circling back a little bit further in the book, but end with a really cool Dana Strum story.
Can I tell you something, buddy? Well, right when we started talking about Bruno, in my brain, I was like, "Is he not going to bring up Dana?"
I'm saving Dana for last, because for those of you that don't know, and I think anyone who's a hard rock fan probably knows this, Dana is one of them guys that not only on this side of the microphone, but on the other side, Dana has done so much. He's mentored so many people along
Hey,
the way.
he he's basically the reason we know who Randy Rhoads is.
I'm there's so many people. Like
But
I've
he's also the
heard
reason we know who
story.
Vinnie Vincent is.
Yeah, like I mean, I've heard so many stories from so many different people of just little things that Dana has done for them along the way, whether it's giving them advice or helping them with their taxes or
Right.
fixing
Right.
their car
He,
or
Dana's
just
Dana's an incredible person, and I think I make it really clear in my book that I wouldn't be speaking to you today probably if it wasn't for Dana. He
yeah.
he he took his time and walked me through this stuff. I saw him just a couple weeks ago and we were laughing because he read the book. I sent him a copy, and I walked into the slaughter. We were playing in the Minneapolis area Rock Fest, and it was Vixen, Slaughter, Trickster, Jet Boy, Oriente, and us, and
Love Jet Boy.
and Lita Ford, and and I walked into his dressing room, and he started talking in this kind of salesman voice, and he started giving me a pitch on my own book. He was selling my own book to me, and he goes, "That's your marketing plan. That's how you got to do it to make this thing a success." And he was great, but then he had this little black licorice loungish thing, lounging, how do you say that word?
Lozenges.
Lozenges. And he just looked at me and he goes, "Eat this." I said, "What the fuck, Dana? What is this?" And he just looked at me and goes, "Have you not trusted me for the last 20 years? Have I ever led you astray on anything I've ever said?" I said, "No, but you've also never just handed me a pill and asked me to eat it." So, and he goes, "Just trust me like you always have." And so I put it in my mouth, and it turns out it's this thing that is illegal in the United States for some reason, but it's but it he goes, "You'll hit every single note." He said, "You'll even hit the high note in the harmony in Nothing But a Good Time Tonight," which is, we all joke because on the record it's a female singing that.
Mhm.
So the only person that can ever hit it's fucking Robert Mason. But
Nice.
because of the people that join us on stage and hang with us or whatever. And uh so he gave this thing to me, and I ate it, and an hour later I was in the dressing room with my acoustic guitar, and I could have sang any fucking Queen song there was. Whatever that magic pill is, I need more of them. But he was right. I trusted him. I have a million Dana stories, man. uh I can't even lock him in, man. He's so full of life and he's so full of energy. And if he decides to speak to you, you better fucking listen,
Yeah.
because he's going to teach you something.
I mean, I've never spoken to Dana. I've never met Dana or got to interview him or anything, but every person that I've ever interviewed or spoken with that knew Dana, whether it was Mark Slaughter,
Uh,
I've interviewed Blas, I've interviewed um, Jerry Dixon from Warrant and Troy Lucetta and um, Mitch Malloy and just a number of people that knew Dana and never a bad word about Dana. They've spoken about Dana in like the utmost reverence that you can have for a person. Like the
because he,
respect that they have isn't just words. Like you can see on their face
oh yeah, because he
the
doesn't fuck
respect
around.
that they have
He doesn't
for
fuck
Dana.
around. And if he says it, he means it. And if he tell you he's going to do it, he's going to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah. And he's firm.
yeah.
I remember there was one night where um Slaughter was opening up for us, and for some reason I wasn't. Usually I, because I kind of act as tour manager too.
Mm-hmm.
Usually I'm there on the grounds all day long, but I remember thinking Dana's going to be there, Slaughter's the opening act. I'll come a little bit later, and All of a sudden, my phone rings and it's my guitar tech. I go, "What do you need?" And he goes, "I'm sitting here with Dana Strum, and he's ordered me to get you on the phone at all costs right now." And something was happening where they were trying to cut the stage size, or something was happening where Dana felt like he wasn't getting what he was told or what he deserved.
Mhm.
And the point is, he didn't fuck around. He went right to who could help.
Right.
There, and he wasn't mean to me, but he said, "Pete, I need you to fix this. You need to make sure that this is corrected." And he was firm and he was kind. And what are you going to say? It, I would bend over backwards. I would do anything that guy ever asked me to do, but he just doesn't fuck around. And if he has a problem, you better listen to him because he's probably right. You know,
Right.
what you just said is I don't. I would probably knock someone out if they had something negative to say about Dana. I'd go to
Yeah.
jail.
I mean, I look, it's music. So I get not everyone is always going to agree, see eye to eye, and there's always going to be little petty things here and there. But Dana is one of, I think, only two or three people that I hear people speak about that way.
Yeah, yeah,
Where where sometimes you hear people talk about somebody else and you can hear the words, but their faces are just kind of saying the words.
yeah, absolutely. Yep, nope,
Dana is one of them people that when people speak about him, you can see it on their face
real
from their
respect.
expressions. You can
Right.
see the admiration. You can see the respect.
Yep,
That there's a smile there. There's a like when you say his name, there's always that
right.
sort of look,
Yeah,
like
because
yeah, that's a good dude.
if he has spoken to you, no matter who you are, whether you're Ozzy Osbourne or some guy in some band that started today, if Dana has spoken to you, he's taught you something, and that's all there is to it. There's an education in that guy. He's from Silver Spring, Maryland, man, right up the street from where I'm from, and you know the only hiccup in his career is that he gave us Vinnie Vincent.
Oh, that's I I have a friend who just started a band, and I I had no intention of talking about this, but I'm going to mention it just because you just mentioned Vinny. Um, his band was recently booked to be the opening act for Vinny's upcoming shows, and my friend is all like, "We're opening for Vinny Vincent. We're opening for Vinny Vincent." And I haven't said a word, but I'm kind of sitting back. Okay, I will believe that when Vinny actually walks out on the stage and picks up a guitar,
Not
because
gonna
you
happen.
are just one of a long line of bands that were going to open for Vinny that never
Yeah,
saw the light of day.
it's
Like
it's it's never going to happen.
yeah, and that was I was like, I don't want to be the dick that says it's never going to happen
Right.
because he's on a real high. Like he's a huge Kiss fan.
Well,
He's
I
like,
would
we're
love to play
opening.
with Vinny. If
Yeah,
Vinny was coming through town, I would try to get the opening gig with one of my bands. I
yeah.
but what a strange cat.
Yeah, like I like I said, I don't want to be that dick that tells him like, do you know anything about Vinny's history?
Right.
Like you might want to like type his name into Google or something because you wouldn't be on nearly of a high as you are right
Sure,
now
sure.
having that show, like
Right. Now I will say though, that first Vinnie Vincent Invasion record, it was great.
yeah.
Boys on Rock and all that stuff. I loved it. I loved it.
I mean, I liked both of them. I liked the ones with Robert and I liked the ones with
Yeah.
Mark and Dana. It's kind of sad how sometimes you
Yeah.
let life get in the way and it takes
There's there,
very
there-
good people and musicians down
there's there's a lot of talent in that little freak's body,
you
man.
know um I'm Chris Holmes is a perfect example. Yeah, I'm glad to see Chris clawing his way back, but there was a period there where as a huge fan of Wasp, as a huge fan of Chris and Widowmaker being one of my favorite songs, it was very painful to
Yeah.
watch Chris and see Chris
I still
the
feel like it's painful, to be honest with you. Even with his rise in popularity and he's got his shit together, I watch it and I watch it and it still hurts because he wasted a lot of time.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like it's as a fan of Chris, it was like you never want to see your heroes like that, man. And
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
And I
they,
like he looks like he's happy now.
yeah, and that's the thing. Like he's slowly getting back to that point where he can be happy and whatnot. But there was that stretch, man, where like that very first video he released of him with the band singing in the garage, and I was just
Yeah,
kind of
right. Right.
like,
Why'd you do that? Yeah.
yeah, like did
But I was so
somebody
happy
not
to
love you enough to tell you that that's bad? Like that to
but
me,
I think like everybody, we were all happy to just see him do something, I
yeah.
think.
I
Right.
mean, to me, it was like, remember in the 90s when they had this shit where you went into the mall and you could like do the video background of you performing the shit?
Yeah, yeah.
That's what it reminded me of.
I gotcha.
And I was just kind of like, ooh, that's a bad flashback. I wish I didn't know anything about. Like,
But you know what? He's alive and we should be
yeah.
grateful
And
for
that's the
that.
important thing, man. It really
Yeah.
is. Like I said, I'm happy to see Chris getting to where he is and
Yeah.
performing again and being stable. And
It sucks because I am a big fan of
yeah,
um Wasp.
yeah.
And I'm also, it's funny. I know that in my book, I've had several people tell me in my book, I'm very kind to everybody. I don't throw anyone under the bus. I praise everyone I speak to. But that's what
Mhm.
that was about, was me talking about the people I love.
Right.
Right. But I am a side taker. Right. I am a loyalist to the end. And if I'm on your side and you have an enemy, I'll fucking kill for you. Right. And the I can't I feel like I don't know Chris and I don't know Blackie, but I feel like I betrayed Chris because I was rooting for Blackie this year too, man. He came back and killed it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've never taken a side in that one. Like
Yeah.
again, that was one of them ones where I'm a huge fan of Wasp, and I get that shit happens, much like the Great White Thing, where
Yeah. I was
I'm
talking with someone about that today. I can't believe Michael Arty's gone as long as he has with this other version. Uh, I I don't have any opinions, so to speak, about it. I
I
just
mean, I've always kind of looked at it in the sense that Michael in oh my god, the guitar player,
yeah.
not Jack,
Why can't I think of his name?
yeah, Mark,
Yeah, yeah, Mark
Michael
Kendall.
and Mark wrote
Yeah,
99% of the music and the lyrics. So
yeah, I get it.
I mean, I, I hated to see it because look, Jack is, and I'm happy to see Jack claw his way back from where he was, with that. So, um, it kind of worked out for both in the end, and hopefully
Sure.
one day you can heal those wounds. I'm not going to hold out a lot of hope, but
Yeah.
it is
It's
what it
funny
is.
when I run into Jack, he's always pleasant.
Yeah,
He's
I,
always
I
happy.
never, I never thought Jack wasn't. I knew
Yeah.
Jack was in a dark place, and I understood why it happened. Like, look,
How could you not be, man?
yeah, like you
Yeah.
can't run a band with somebody like that.
Yeah.
Like it makes business really hard. So I
Yeah.
got it. But again, it always sucks to see your heroes in that spot to where that
Yeah.
type of shit has to happen.
Yeah.
But you know, I've always felt kind of taken a not my monkeys, not my circus type of approach to it
Sure,
because
sure.
I'm not a member of the band and I'm not in their inner circle. So
Right.
my
Yeah.
opinion probably doesn't mean jack shit to them, like no
I'm with
more
you.
than me telling you, hey, I think Bret Michaels band should do this or should do that. I mean,
Yeah, right. I
you
get
can listen to me, but at the end of the day, you can also walk away like, what the fuck do you know about the Bret Michaels band? Like
it. Yeah, no, I get it. I get it.
so
Yeah, I
uh,
gotta tell you though, you're a busy dude and you're such a fan and you champion all this stuff for all of us. But it's clear that you truly did sit down and read that book. And just as a friend, I want to tell you thank you. It means a lot that you would have taken your time to do that.
I read, believe it or not, I started the book and I read the first, I think about 3 chapters, about the first 35 or 38 pages. And I had a bunch of shit happen. So I kind of like, okay, I'll finish it. And then when I set the interview up, I was like, okay, I have like 12 hours and I've got like 236 pages to read.
Yeah.
And I literally sat down. The interview was at like 7 o'clock, and I sat down at 1 o'clock. And between 1 o'clock and 7 o'clock, I read 236 pages.
And that means everything to me. I don't know how I could repay you for that, but thank you very much.
Dude,
just tell your listeners to buy it.
Do what?
Tell your listeners it's worth buying.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to wrap it up by me saying this is an amazing book. If you were there during the time, you will absolutely relate to this book. You will at some point during this book, you will say, been there, done that.
Right.
I guarantee it. Like, there's so many stories that so many of us
as whether you're just a fan or a musician.
Yeah.
It covers both aspects of that, I think. So
yeah, absolutely. Like, there's so much. And I just, like I said, I jotted down just a few notes.
Yeah.
But these really were the major points. I mean, I could have done 10 cards like this of stuff from the book that I related to on levels of,
well, again,
that or the other thing.
I just thank you for reading it and talking to me about it, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So for those of you fans, get this book. It's called MTV Famous. You have another book as well, right?
Yeah, The Moments That Make Us.
The Moments That Make Us. So you can find that one as well. Music wise, do you have music out that's newer than the last stuff we spoke about?
Yeah, a month ago I released it, so it's very interesting. I'll tell you real quick. My very first band, Some Odd Reason, I was talking about earlier. My first record was called To Whom It May Concern. And the title track was called To Whom It May Concern. And Richard Goddard, Blondie and the Go-Go's, produced the record, and he loved that song. But we made that record in 1998. And the song is basically a war protest song. And it was something that I'd carried with me from 1990, the influence from watching the first Gulf War start, because that was basically like the first war that was of our generation. It was televised. Like, we sat and watched it on CNN every night, And so the song, I wrote the song based on that, but by the time 1998 came around, there was no war. There was no. It was actually one of the most peaceful times in the world history, as far as there wasn't a ton of conflict. There was some, but I'd written this song from my influences in '90, but it didn't come out of me till 1998. And Richard had kept going, man, this is a hit song. There's just no war. So there's nothing. It doesn't fit the time we're in. And then, like you and me talked about in the book about the singers, I became the singer of my own band, Evick, and I started to re-record that material. And my hard drive crashed 24 years ago. My hard drive crashed, and it had all kinds of stuff on it. And I remember I took it to all these people, and they were like, nope, this thing's just gone. It's dead. It's gone. It's dead. Right. And then I found that hard drive about 2 months ago, and I plugged it in, and it worked out of nowhere. And that's like divine intervention. And that song was on there, my version of me singing it 20 some years ago. So I thought, with the conflict happening in Ukraine, and how hard that hit me, that I thought, to release this song, and the artwork for the album cover for the single was more important to me than the song. It was a vision of something I had in my head that was crucial to me that I got out. So I made the artwork, released the single, and it's the newest thing I have out. It's called "To Whom It May Concern," but the truth is, it's 20 some years old.
You know, I think sometimes music will find its way
Yeah,
when it's needed the most. So
right. That's exactly it.
There might have been a reason that
that's what I'm
it
saying.
took that
How
long.
would you plug a hard drive in 20 some years later and it works out of nowhere? There's a reason.
So. What I'm saying, and I got a kick out of I didn't realize you worked in computer tech either, and I got a kick out of finding out that you were associated with the ringtones and real audio and all of that, because for a good number of years before Winamp, real audio was what I relied on for all of my music and video and
and it's funny,
RM files.
But like I say in the book, man, hindsight's different. When that was happening to me, I felt like such a loser, and I felt like I'd betrayed my whole soul being by taking a real job. But it was in the music industry, it was the music stuff. But now I look back on it and I think it's the coolest fucking thing ever. Like, I was the first dude in the United States ever hired to create ringtones, and that was revolutionary. And it's funny, when I look back now, it's the coolest thing in the world. But back then, I was suicidal that I was actually doing it.
That's crazy.
All right, brother. Well, thank you for taking the time.
Yes. This is Mr. Pete Evick, guitarist, band leader, tour manager, so many things for the Bret Michaels band. He also has the band Evick, music that you can look up. Also look up the stuff he mentioned. Other than that, is like the earlier stuff, is that available on streaming and all of that?
All of it. Everything. The Band Squad Reasons available on iTunes, my earlier Evick stuff and my newer Evick stuff. Just it's everywhere.
Awesome. I'm gonna have to actually look that up and listen to it then, because
all right, buddy.
After reading about it and all of that and not hearing it, I'm sort of interested in all of that. But as always, you know how we end this. Be well, treat each other with kindness. Remember that no matter what you're going through, music will heal.